day, everyone. Welcome back to our video lecture. And on today's video lecture, we will be looking into another topic. It's a new topic and it's our Unit 4. And Unit 4 for our subject creative writing is the writing process. So I know you guys are very much ready. So without further ado, let's begin. As of this time, allow me to share my screen for everybody. Right now, you guys already see my screen. It is already shared. And I believe, no, we are already ready to look into a new topic, which is the writing process. This is, again, our unit of the subject, creative writing. So the writing process. Now, when we say process, of course, we would think of steps. And when we say writing, obviously, it's way to put into words what we have in mind. So let's delve deeper about Unit 4, the writing process. In order for us to understand about this unit, we will look into the following. Number one, understanding the writing process. We'll look into the 5 steps in the writing process from different sources, and then we'll look into how to teach the 5 steps. Since you guys, when you become a teacher, you will also be teaching writing. So it's good to see the different ways on how we could possibly teach the writing process to your future students. Now, let's look into the first topic. So, understanding the writing process. Just like any approaches to learning, there is also an approach that we have to explore in writing. So, the process of translating our thoughts and the ideas that we have into words and into papers can be difficult. Like, it's not easy. And in fact, it's easy to forget that it is a process. Like without us knowing or we are not conscious that the translation of thoughts, of our thoughts and ideas into words and into paper is actually a process. So it is not just something that happens. It follows a specific process. So every write-up starts with an idea in your head. So you can turn it into a collection of sentences, the idea that you have, and then you go through revisions to consider it before you can consider it as the final output. And then you could probably hand in into a publishing house or anywhere where you can publish. It's much more than writing something down. It's changing a few words, and finally you hand it in to a publisher. So why did I include this? So that we would understand that writing does not just happen like this in a snap, but it is a process. And in a way, we are not really conscious that it is a process, but it really is. So learning how to write or the writing process is basically same when you are learning how to drive. So in driving, you just can't hop on inside your car and then start steering the steering wheel and boom, you can drive. No, you have to go through the process. You learn the theories in driving. You also need to learn the different traffic rules and the different do's and don'ts. And then you probably take time to practice driving for a few hours. You incorporate everything that you have learned from the theories that you have looked into, and then you will be able to start driving and practice until you master the skill in driving. Same with writing. Writing, it's not just like you put into words what you have in mind and then that's it. You take your pen and paper and you just write everything you have in mind and that's it, and then you're good to publish your paper or to publish your literary work. No, it is a process, which means you have to know what is it about. You have to know what is your subject, what is your theme, and you also have to know how to make it right. So you need to know the rules, you need to know the process. It's a step by step before you can finally say that your literary piece or that your write-up is obviously ready for publication. Now, we'll look into this diagram. So this is a process. And since it's a process, we start from brainstorm, we go all the way to edit and revise, and we keep going. So it's like after edit and revise, you will do again another writing task, and then you go with the plan, outline, draft, edit, revise, and then it's a process, and thing goes on and on. So in between the steps that you have to follow, there should be feedback. Feedback is very important. Now, if there is no professor who could give you a feedback, it is really good if you try to look into it yourself, like try to figure out and provide a feedback for yourself. But if you have a professor who can provide you a feedback or who can give you inputs, it's really good. And since we are in this class, that means I am here to provide you with the feedback. But you don't have to worry, because if you are just learning creative writing or the writing process all by yourself, because you want to explore writing, definitely there are already a lot of softwares that could also help you with feedback. So for example, we have artificial intelligence applications that are available and free to access online that you can just use a version probably of what you have written. Then you can ask AI specific feedback on how to improve your write-up. But of course, you don't ask AI to improve it and then you use what the AI gave you as your final output. No, because that is AI's work, right? So we start with a brainstorm, and then we go to plan and outline, and then we do the draft, and then we edit, and then we revise. And then, as I said, in between, there should be feedbacks. Now, the 5 steps that I just mentioned earlier, and that was also shown in the diagram, it's actually from SUNY Potsdam College Writer's Block. So this is our reference for these 5 steps. Let's look into brainstorm. So in brainstorm, in this stage, you have to think about the assignment. Okay? Think of the assignment that your professor asked you to do. And what is it asking you to do? What materials do you think you will need to do that? And what ideas are you considering writing about? So since it's creative writing, and I already told you that our final output for this course is a short story. So perhaps by now you already have an idea or you already brainstorm on the specific genre that you want to write about, or like the characters of your story, since we already discussed as well the different fundamentals of creative writing. So you should start thinking. And I told you already, please start thinking as early as now, because you probably need time. Okay. There are a lot of time you need before you can come up with your final output. Now, make list or mind maps. So in the mind maps, you are just going to look into what is it, what is your central idea, what is the core, okay, of that specific task that you are asked to, and what is the core of that specific subject that you have in mind. Then you can look into sub like keywords, okay, that you can think that would be associated to that core. So it's like you create a specific map in your head in order for you to narrow down a general subject that you have in mind, or in order for you to associate different keywords, or in the context of creative writing, probably scenes that would, or a plot that basically is possible for that specific subject that you have in mind. So, and look into how they fit together. Remember, you are not writing yet. You are doing a brainstorm. You are still brainstorming. So, in the mind mapping, you think of like your subject, the core or the central idea, and then look for sub ideas that you can associate with your central idea. So whatever you have, you can also go with reading. Okay, another example, so you could be able to brainstorm is read. So this one is simple. Reading is simple, but usually we forgot about it. Now what you have to do is you need to read the required materials and at the same time take notes, no, that will help with the assignment. You need to know the content before you can write about it. So know details about the things, okay? Especially if you're a creative writer. You could think of a specific story, okay, or genre that you have in mind, but you may not be that really experienced to write about it. But there are plenty of ways in order for you to know information and to gather inputs, okay, valuable inputs. So you could start, or you could at least have an idea on what to do with what you have planned or what you have in mind. Next is plan or outline. So, given that you already have brainstormed ideas and you already have things, like gathered, so what you have to do is to plan and create an outline. So you already understood the assignment, you know what to do, you have an idea of what you want to do based on the assignment given. Make a plan now in order for you to be able to get your literary work done. So will you work on it a little bit every day? You can think about that since, as I told you, your final output is a short story, and you still have plenty of time before the final term week anyway. So basically, you can start now and you can think of planning like specific time that you will be writing, or you can have one night a week for a long period of time. So it is up to you. Now you think of your main idea, or like if it is a research paper, you can think of a thesis statement. So make an outline. So what is it that what is your goal here? You make an outline of your main points and how to do, and what is the first step you have to do. Okay, and write down all the supporting evidence, pieces of evidence that you have. Now, if you can think of supporting evidence, you probably need to rethink your main points, and so you could be able to create an outline. So in creative writing, you create an outline. And then as you draft and revise later on, you'll probably be able to improve the central idea that you have in mind or the thesis statement. So your points and your evidence so that you could be able to make it a stronger paper, or you could be able to make it a better literary piece. So start out rather with the ideas you have to fulfill your assignment. Okay. And then your outline can be just a simple list of points with subpoints. So you know how to do outlining, right? Roman numeral one and what are the things. So in the context of creative writing, you can do it plot. Okay, like what do you have in mind for your exposition? How about the rising action? How about the climax and then the falling action and then the denouement or the resolution? And then next, after the plan and outline, is draft. Now, this time you start writing your literary piece, your short story, or your paper. And this time in the drafting stage, don't worry about grammar or spelling. Don't worry about paragraphs, no, flowing perfectly. Here, we are not perfect. We show all our flaws. Just get your ideas down in sentences until you have a complete draft. You need to get that draft done. And of course, you based it on your outline. The ideas are the most important part of your paper, of your literary work. This is where you have to spend more time. Let your ideas flow, go onto the paper. Let your creative juices just flow smoothly. Okay, don't interrupt it. Don't hold back as well. Thinking all the ideas have to be finished and clear before you write them down. Don't do that. Okay, writing is a space for thinking things out. And how would you be able to do it? By drafting. You take time to explain and back up each of your main points or ideas, or back up the scenes, and writing clear things, clear scenes. No? You have to remember when you also write this, you also be guided with the two rules, which is don't tell, but rather show, and then be specific. So just let your ideas flow, guided with the rules and the things in how to make a literary or a short story, and get the content down. Next, after the drafting stage, we have the revise, okay, to revise. Now, revising means making changes. So you make big changes here. You look into paragraphs, you look into scenes. There might be portions that it's quite off and actually do not really support with the idea in the previous paragraph. So you can move paragraphs, you can delete, okay, you can also add. So you can change orders or you can make use of stronger transition sentences. So it can add completely new points. You can add completely new points and new paragraphs or new scenes. So make sure your ideas reflect on what you really meant, okay? What you really want your readers to imagine and to visualize. And revise your content to make sure it really addresses the assignment asked from you, and you are also able to express how you want it to be. That's revise. Next is edit. So edit, this is the fifth step. So editing means making now changes to sentences and individual words. Now earlier, you in the step 3 in drafting, don't you are not required to think about sentences and to think about syntax, how, the rules in grammar and everything in the mechanics. But now in the edit, which is step 5, you have to look into them on this stage. Okay, you will look into the sentences and the individual words if this is the right word to be used. So it can be looking for errors in spelling of grammar, or making sure your sentences are correct or your sentences connect with one another. And now is the time to think of the overall flow of your narrative, of your literary piece. Your ideas are written, you've written all the support for your ideas, and now everything needs to be clear and everything needs to be, not everything needs to be flawless, like in terms of grammar and all that. So you have to look into it in the editing part. And your teacher needs to be able to understand what you've written to evaluate it. So that should also be your goal. Make sure you have clear word choice and structure so that your professor can focus on your ideas and not on your erroneous mechanics or the erroneous structure of sentences and then grammar usage. So these are the 5 steps according to SUNY Potsdam College Writer's Block. Now let's look into the writing process based on the book of Andrew Johnson in 2024. So Andrew Johnson, actually, he has written a book, okay? The title of his book is Being and Becoming Teachers of Writing, a Meaning-Based Approach. And we'll look into the writing process that he mentioned in his book. So let's look into the step 1, pre-writing. So according to Johnson, pre-writing includes generating ideas, so organizing ideas and sometimes collecting data. So this is very similar with brainstorm, no? Strategies for generating ideas include things like listing, of course, brainstorming, power writing. You can do also conversations, ask questions, okay? Reading strategies for organizing include using graphic organizers, outlining, inductive analysis, and it depends on what the students are doing. So this is now the pre-writing. You gather information, okay? Gather inputs or ideas, generate ideas. So you will have a lot of information or inputs that you can use. Next, step 2, according to Johnson, after pre-writing is you do drafting. So drafting, it is the writer's first attempt to capture ideas on paper. So now that you gathered, you have inputs, you probably did outline already in during the pre-writing. So now it's time for you to start putting what the ideas you have in your mind into words and put it into paper. So the goal here is to simply get a bunch of words on the page, okay? However, class, if don't worry about grammar, about correct grammar, punctuation, and spelling here. You don't have to, because remember, the writing is a process, right? You start with pre-writing, then drafting. In drafting, don't worry about the mechanics, don't worry about the grammar, okay? Don't worry about the rules and the grammar. You just express, you let your creative juices really flow freely without reservations. Next is step 3, revising. So revising, this is now the heart of the writing process, according to Johnson. So, as a writer, you already created your literary piece. So, in the revising stage, you have to revisit your write up, okay, the entire literary piece, the entire short story, reshape it, as it was also mentioned in the other's source. You have to move paragraphs. You have to have a sound judgment on which comes first, or is everything okay already based on the plot of your story, or are there things that better be added under in the rising action than being seen in the climax. So in the climax, and then you have to review your write up, your literary piece, many times. Read it. Now parts can be added, parts can be moved around, or you can delete if you think it's not necessary anymore, or if it does not make any sense. That's revising. Step 4 is editing. So in editing, this is now you worry about the grammar. So you reread, you revisit your entire literary piece and check for grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. Make sure you were able to correct all these, okay, if you can spot errors. Now, remember, okay, that the quickest way to ruin a good writing project or damage a writer is to insist that this step 4, which is editing, shall be done in step 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so if you insist on doing that, you will be ruining, you will just ruin, you will just be ruining your literary piece or your write up. So don't do that. Follow the process. Follow step 1, which is pre-writing. Step 2 is drafting. Step 3 is revising. And then step 4 is now this is the time for you to be cautious and the time for you to be meticulous about the grammar, spelling, punctuation, mechanics. Then look into it. Then because if writers are editing or worrying about mechanics at the during steps 1, 2, or 3, the flow of ideas and the quality of writing will suffer. So don't allow that to happen. Now, precious brain space that could be devoted to generating and connecting ideas will instead be used of worrying about the writing mechanics. If you let step 4 gets in the way, even if you are still in steps 1, 2, and 3. Next, the step 5 is publishing and sharing. This is the final step. So step 5 is when you publish and when you share, according to Andrew Johnson. Sharing writing with real people is actually what makes it become real and come alive. So you can either read it like in front of your classmates, or in our case, we obviously have your class website where you will publish and allow your classmates to read your stories or your write-up. So the publishing and sharing, it helps the writer actually develops a sense of audience and voice. So one of the strategies of doing sharing is, let your students read parts of their work in small or large groups. They could also exchange their writing with others, or they can utilize some other form of publication, which is in our case, we have your class weblog. Now let's look into how to teach the 5 steps. So first is you can use direct and explicit instruction. So by the time you guys will become a teacher, you'll also be teaching the writing process to your learners. So use direct and explicit instruction. You can use small bits of direct instruction to teach each step of the writing process. You can also teach the grammar, the punctuation, and other writing mechanics. So remember, direct instruction actually includes the element of effective skills instruction, like you provided inputs and you model or you demonstrate or you provide a guided practice activity. It could also be an independent practice and review. Second is demonstrate the steps. So in this case, demonstration usually involves cognitive modeling. So you write with your students. So modeling, where you think aloud as you are demonstrating steps or related strategies. So we have here an example which I took from Mr. Johnson's book. So Miss Bell was giving a mini lesson to her third grade students about a pre-writing strategy. So she used her own writing project to demonstrate. So she demonstrate this um, to her students. So this is the way it goes. Boys and girls, I want to write about going to the state fair. I have some ideas in my mind or in my head, but I'm still a little fuzzy about what I want to say. I need to use one of our pre-writing strategies, a listing. This is when you write a list of ideas that pop into your head about your writing topic before you start writing. So you do the steps with your students. So with that, the students would be able to help, giving you specific ideas, and then they would raise their hands and all that, and you will start listing and having a lot of options. Here, Miss Bell began listing ideas on the board and naming each one as she did. So, and then she paused. As I'm listing these things, some other ideas are starting to pop in my head. I'm going to add these new ideas to my list. So she listed these new ideas on the board and said, and these new ideas are giving me more new ideas and then more and more ideas. So that's what can happen when you just start listing. So you start listing. Listing is one of the strategies or one of the things you can do during pre-writing. And as I'm thinking of these ideas, I'm going to list some of the sounds, smells, and sights. These were included in the list. Now I think I've got enough ideas to start writing my first draft. So this is how you use listing as a pre-writing strategy. So you demonstrate exactly in front of your students how to do the pre-writing stage, okay, by using listing as your strategy. Next, Miss Bell then used guided practice to reinforce this pre-writing strategy. Now, Miss Bell said, let's try doing one together. So first, it was still Miss Bell doing it. And then after that guided practice, so now they are going to do something together. And then I'll ask you to try it on your own. So here, Miss Bell used a topic with which all were familiar, which is recess. So the class brainstormed about things they might see, hear, or do at recess. After which, Miss Bell said, wow, if I wanted to write about recess, I would have some great ideas for starting my first draft. Now, think about the idea that you've decided to write about today. So I've given you some thinking paper. In the next 3 minutes, I want you to start listing things that pop into your mind about your topic, which is recess. So they put now all the ideas down. Even the silly ideas here is welcome because that will help your learners think of other ideas. So you'll be sharing your list to your writing partner. So after they list the ideas on their own paper, they will now share what they have listed with their writing partner, okay, or with their seatmate before they will start writing. This is the guided practice. So this is an example of teaching the pre-writing stage to your learners with strategies which are listing and then the guided practice. Next is write. So this is a good place. How do you teach write? No, how do you teach them to write? So this is a good place to once again reinforce the importance of writing along with your students. So if the teacher is writing along with his or her students, it's really good because writing enables you to better understand each of the 5 steps. So when you write, you also remember things about writing to pass along to your students. And then you can put up posters listing the 5 steps in your classroom. So posters can be used as a reference when teaching and when conferencing with writers. They also remind students of the 5 steps as they're writing. Ideally, the 5-step writing process would be taught to students in kindergarten, even through graduate school, and posters would be visible wherever there is writing taking place. So it would remind them that these are the writing process, or this is the writing process. Next is use scaffold. So writing shapes and organizes our thinking, according to Langer and Appleby in 2007. Our thinking also shapes and organizes our writing, obviously. So scaffolds actually provide a temporary structure for writing, for thinking that gradually becomes internalized. So scaffolds include things such as, let's say, graphic organizers or step-by-step guides. Now, a scaffold could also include things like a teacher writing prompt. Okay, so you will be able to guide the student. And however, any type of scaffold is meant to be a temporary guide for thinking and writing and not a permanent recipe to follow. It's just temporary. So as an analogy, when a scaffold is used to build something, it's not actually designed to be a permanent part of that structure. Rather, it's only used to support the building process. If you are going to look into, scaffold in the building process, and it's taken down as soon as possible, as soon as possible when the student can already do it on his own. So it is with scaffolds used for writing. So next is, you can also teach the 5 steps by making a school-wide commitment to writing and the 5-step writing process. So if your school, if your future schools are really serious about improving students' ability to write and think, every teacher of writing at every level actually needs to understand and use the 5-step writing process, because it would really allow you to be able to have a very presentable output if you follow the writing process. The school must also provide daily writing practice, like you as a teacher, in which students are engaged in authentic writing activities. And that would be all for our topic on Unit 4, the writing process. So again, on this video lecture, you guys learn about the following. We learn about understanding the writing process. We also learn the 5 steps in the writing process and then teaching the 5 steps. Right? So I hope you guys learn a thing or two from this lecture. And if there are some parts of this video lecture that are not clear to you, you can ask me the questions during our face-to-face classes. So I believe I'm very much excited to actually see your outputs, your short stories by the end of by the end of the semester, and it will be it will be easier for you to do it if you start it now. You start with the first step of the writing process. So then you could do the next step until you will be able to produce the final output. So don't forget the writing process, the 5 steps. We have pre-writing, we have drafting, we have revising, we have editing, and then we have publishing and sharing. And that's all for this video lecture. I will see you in our next video lecture. Bye bye, everyone.